Hi, I'm glad you found my channel. This is Esther from Stampin' Star Creations. I'm using colours from the February Stampin' Up Colour Challenge, Seaside Spray, Grapefruit Grove, Coastal Cabana and Night of Navy. I'll be incorporating this with the Duo Heart Pack and the punch from that pack and the Seaside Notion stamp set and some shimmer white cardstock. I'll be doing the mirror technique using the silicone mat. So I'm grabbing a few of the post-it notes, and this just means you've got some spares for another time. I'm trying to figure out the best way to punch out the heart so it's got the most amount of sticky to be able to adhere it to my card. In the end, I've gone for a bit where it's just sticky along the top. Going in with the Seahorse and Night of Navy, I'm going to stamp on either side, and I'm trying to position this so that I get the most of the image on the card, so I have to tilt him off to the side quite a bit. And then stamping again on the silicone mat, turning it over and positioning where I want it on the card next to the other side of the heart. I use a clear block just as a flat surface to help apply pressure to the silicone mat. Now the image does come out ever so slightly lighter, but I don't mind this for the sake of what I'm trying to achieve. Just using my chamois with a bit of water on, and this just cleans the ink right off, and it's as good as new. Next I'm coming in with Grapefruit Grove and doing second and third generation stamping, which means stamping your stamp with the same ink on it 2 or 3 times to get that sandy look at the bottom. Now in the past I've used this stamp a lot for seaweed. I don't know why, I just assumed it looked like seaweed, and then somebody mentioned about coral, so I thought, oh, I'd like to use it for coral for this particular card. Using Coastal Cabana to add some shell details in the bottom. So just opening out my ink pads to use as palettes, so if you give them a squeeze in the middle of the ink, then it can create a palette. Now just using the ink that's already on the card and my aqua pen to pick up the colour and to create this wash on the card. I'm going quite carefully because I think I was going to add another colour. In the end I don't, so then I just carry on using the Night of Navy to colour in the seahorses. So I've got a Mr. and Mrs. Seahorse. The right hand side one is slightly lighter, but it's quite nice to differentiate the two. Going in and picking up the Grapefruit Grove colour from my palette, and I'm bringing it back in to colour in the coral. I'm not too worried about that seam or the gap between the extended coral, just linking it together using that watercolour. Giving it a quick blow dry with the heat tool to dry it off, ready for the next stage. I'm using a Seaside spray with a makeup brush. These are the ones with the very soft bristles, and rubbing that colour on. When you're using masks, you do need to differentiate where the line of the mask is to make sure you get that stark effect. So I decided to colour the rest of the card, giving it a blue wash with the makeup brush. And then bringing in my decorative mask, and I'm using this leaf design for like a nice organic feel. Going in with the same colour, using Seaside spray and just intensifying the colour through the stencil. I'm making sure that I concentrate a lot around the seahorse and the masking, and then trying to avoid the coral. So the great thing about this mask is you can actually see through it, so you can see where you're laying down the colour. A nice slow reveal shows you the how that effect comes out, and then just checking to see how that heart looks underneath. Now I decide after this is taken off it's quite stark white, and I wasn't sure about that, so I decided to use the negative part of where I've punched my heart out from my post-it notes and laid it on top of the image so that I can use that to colour inside the heart only. I'm using Grapefruit Grove and going in with a brush again to just colour in and lay down some colour inside the heart. I'm much happy with that, it gives it a bit of colour for the inside. I'm using Here's to You from the same stamp set, and I'm checking to see if it fits across the heart, but it doesn't, so I'm just going to stamp this in 2 different rows. So just checking that it won't be too smudgy, and I'm just making sure it doesn't smudge too much, so I go in with my chamois just to clean up the edge of the block and the edges of the stamp. And then I'm going in again to stamp the other 2 words and masking off the end with the post-it note and applying some more colour. I'm afraid I went off screen to do this, I didn't realise I was off screen. In hindsight I probably could have done with pushing up the words in the centre more, but it's an opportunity to embellish and decorate. So going in with my brush again, I'm just filling in the colour with the Coastal Cabana on the shells. I'm just lightly laying down the pearls just to see how they look, not actually pressing them down at this stage because I wanted to see what it would look like. And then I wanted one in that little oyster at the bottom. So I was happy with that, so I pressed those down, and then I thought, oh, it could do with a bit of linen thread. So I bring on the thread, trying to figure out how I'm going to use it on my card. I decided to do a double bow. And for some reason, whenever I do this on screen, it never seems to do it the first time round. So with the second attempt, I managed to do a bow. And then with the double knot, you just snip off the ends to create that bow shape and take your time to put it around to get the right size. I just tucked it in the top left corner of the card. I'm just going to go in with glue dot to adhere that down. So I went to roll it in half, so it wouldn't show through, and it ended up getting stuck on my thumb. And then anyway, we managed in the end, so I popped it down onto the card. Using some of our multi-purpose liquid glue to apply it onto some Night of Navy cardstock. Now I'm using my grid paper to help me align this because I often tend to go off at an angle, sit at an angle, stick at an angle, and it tends to go off in a funny angle, so just using my grid paper to help me. Now at this stage I thought I'd finished my card, I was happy with it. I walk away and I'm done as far as I'm concerned, and then after looking at the picture of it I wasn't happy with it, so I've come back to edit it and to show you that on the video. So my issue was the fact that the noses and the tummy of the seahorses weren't showing on top of the card. They just looked a bit odd being hidden behind that heart despite all the masking. So I've got a piece of scrap shimmer paper here and getting out my Night of Navy and the seahorse stamp again and just finding the best position to actually get this stamped onto the paper. And then using the same method with the silicone mat, I'm going to come in with that. So you might have just seen that I've turned my stamp over because obviously it's going to be a mirror image. So I wanted to make sure it fitted on the section that I wanted it to. I find the block helpful just to get an even pressure onto that image. And like I said before, it will come out lighter, but it's fine for what I need. And then going in with the aqua pen to pick out the colour. So when you're fussy cutting, just cut off the excess. You don't want loads of card or paper hanging around. It makes it much more difficult to cut. So I do fussy cut around these seahorses. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Just take your time with it. And I've left a little white border. I wanted them ever so slightly bigger than the image. And I'm much more happy with that, just laying that down to see how it looks on the card. So I've done one, and I'm just going to fussy cut around this one, and I'll show you how that looks. Yep, much happy with that. So I go ahead and stick some dimensionals all over the backs. The great thing about having the two sizes is you've got the bigger ones to cover a larger area and the smaller ones for the smaller area. So I stuck this down, slightly offset it. So now I've got that lovely image underneath that I'm going to use as a shadow for the seahorses. And here I've linked the tails. I love this idea because I think this is what they do in real life, I think. And then I wasn't sure about this linen thread being tucked behind. It just wasn't working. I was trying to figure out what else I could do with it, where I could stick it. And I thought, oh, I could put it in my lady seahorse. It was a bit too big, so I'm just pulling that down to shorten it and trim it down, and I've stuck it in her head as a little bow. So before you go, I just wanted to show you what I've been doing with my scraps recently. I've been trying to sort my scraps and to just use my mini trimmer here, which is available at the moment if you sign up with me at stampinup.co.uk, cutting them down to more usable pieces, and so you're not left with these kind of catching scraps. I did leave this as it was, just so it was a bigger size and not a teeny tiny scrap to deal with. I'm really pleased with the final outlook of the card and how I've changed it, and I'm glad that I could share that with you today. Do subscribe at Stampin' Star Creation.